What I'm about to say is going to make some people upset. I don't care about slasher movies, but maybe by the end of this video my mind will have changed. I have nothing against people that like those movies, they just don't really do much for me. Slashers never even really scared me growing up because I had a red belt in Taekwondo, so I could definitely fuck somebody up. But recently I realized I've never actually seen the OG slasher movies. So I can't really say I don't like them if I haven't seen those. And I guess I can't really call myself a true horror fan if I haven't seen them. I thought The Exorcist was enough, but I guess not. So I decided to take on the task of watching every classic slasher. Let's start off with Halloween. This is the story of Mike Myers before he went on to play Shrek. The movie jumps straight into it with the introduction of Mike Myers from a first-person perspective. I thought it was a really cool and creepy way to introduce the character. Anyway, he stabs his sister in the titties and his parents find him after his first murder, and they stare at him for a long time. Like, are they gonna move? It's fairly predictable, and maybe that's because this is one of the movies that invented the formula of slashers. Regardless, it's still a fun watch because it's campy and has the iconic score that everybody knows and loves. And it's so weird watching a movie from this time period because the high schoolers in this movie look like they're in their 40s. The stalking element of Mike Myers is cool and creepy, and I honestly found it to be one of the scariest parts of the movie. His presence is so eerie, and when you look at it from the main character's perspective, you don't know if it's a hallucination or not.
Hello, is it me you're looking for?
And with it being the day of Halloween, it's easy to think it's just some asshole in a costume pulling a prank. I would imagine that seeing this in the 80s made people view the holiday much differently when going out. So by the end of the movie, you know how it's gonna play out. Jamie Lee Curtis survives, Mike Myers is revealed, and although it doesn't feel obvious how the movie would play out, it didn't really take away from how entertaining the whole thing was, and I think the movie knew what it was trying to be. Also, the dead people look really funny in this movie, like they're all cross-eyed and shit. This was an easy watch, and I could see myself putting it on for Halloweens to come. Now for Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I'm about to go back and forth with this one. I thought this would be another campy slasher movie, but this one felt like it was found footage. My introduction to this real-life serial killer was in Mortal Kombat. Still waiting on that Jeffrey Dahmer DLC. The lack of background music puts you in the moment and makes you forget that this is a movie and not some real-life footage. The opening scene where the camera flashes on all the dead bodies is so grotesque and throws you right into this real-life situation. The opening crawl adds to the severity of it and tells you right away that this is not some fun slasher movie. I was already feeling unsettled when the teens let the crackhead onto the van, but then it just gets worse from there. Although at this moment I thought, yeah, these people are gonna get themselves killed. The movie wastes no time getting to the kills and disturbing elements of it all. We get our first kill as soon as they enter this creepy abandoned house. Okay, you guys were asking to die. It's disturbing just how sudden the kills are and how the screams aren't paired with any music or anything. You really are there in that moment. Leatherface is so much creepier than I would have expected because he's so insane and so unpredictable. Throughout this movie, I found myself feeling uneasy and nauseous because of the amount of slaughter and grotesque things that we see. For the most part, the movie does feel like how you would expect the whole event to play out in real life. So after we see the fat guy become a dead body on wheels, we're left with whatever this chick's name is. And this is where I felt like I was being tortured. Because the last 30 minutes is nothing but her screaming. And look, I get it, she's being thrown around left and right, it's a really disturbing situation to be in. I get why she's screaming the entire time. But from a viewer's perspective, I was ready for the movie to end. The ending just didn't feel rewarding at all because I had lost all interest by the time she finally gets away, and when she does get away, she's still screaming. It just doesn't stop. Overall, it's a really gross movie with a lot of screaming. First 30 minutes are cool, and the last 30 minutes annoyed the shit out of me. What I'm trying to say is, yeah, I didn't like it, but I get why some people would. Some people are into, like, torture porn, I guess. Now we move on to Friday the 13th. Oh man, I'm so excited to watch this one because I've always thought Jason was such a cool, iconic character. I feel like I always saw this character everywhere growing up. So yeah, I'm excited to watch this.
2 hours later.
That was not what I expected. Oh shit, Kevin Bacon's in this movie. From beginning to end, characters are getting killed left and right, and I didn't really care. The kills are certainly brutal, and I love the first person perspective where we don't actually get to see the killer. But man, almost every character in this movie had it coming. And look, I get it, characters in horror movies make dumb decisions because they're in a panic. But everyone in this movie was asking to die. Look, I'm not being entirely fair to this movie because it is a product of its time and the campiness of it was just a big part of 80s movies. I still love the 80s score that fit the tone. By the third act, I thought I would have a very tame review of this one. But man, that twist really caught me off guard. So we come to find out that the killer is none other than Mama Jason, a woman.
Everything woke turns to
I really appreciated how all the dots connected once we found out that she was the killer. Because her son Jason drowned in a lake, she's become a psycho with a personality disorder that kills horny teenagers. It made entire sense why we got that first kill in the beginning of the movie because she had a vengeance for the camp counselors. Or why the teenage girl trusted her to get a ride because she just looks like a sweet old lady. It was a great reveal that completely caught me off guard. And it completely changed my perception of this movie. So then we get the typical part of the third act where the killer chases down the last survivor, but the part where Jason emerges out of the lake also caught me off guard, and I can just imagine seeing that movie in the theater back in the 80s and how big of a jump scare that must have been for people. I still thought the movie was solid, and I see why people still talk about it to this day. Now we move on to Five Nights at Freddy Krueger's. A Nightmare on Elm Street is another one I was not prepared for. I know not everyone would consider this a slasher because he's a supernatural character, but whatever. He's got knives for fingers, and I've never seen this movie, so we're watching it. Oh shit, Johnny Depp's in this one. From the beginning, you're thrown right into the action with a nightmare featuring Freddy Krueger, and not long after that, we get the very first kill of the movie, which I did not expect to be as brutal as it was. I'm also realizing now that the Black Phone 2 is a ripoff. The kills and dream sequences hold up pretty well for the most part, and considering that's the case, I can only imagine how creeped out people were back in the 80s. And this movie is also very disgusting, in a good way, not a Texas Chainsaw Massacre type of way. And I think the comedic aspect of the character makes him that much creepier because he's so unpredictable. Bro really kissed a girl through the phone.
I'm your boyfriend now, Nancy.
I gotta respect that. The practical effects hold up better than I thought they would. I felt invested in our main character Nancy because the entire time she's trying to prevent Freddy from reaching other people. One of her biggest conflicts is her struggle to stay awake and avoid Freddy. Perhaps cocaine would have saved her life. This really did feel like the most 80s horror movie I have ever seen. The score felt like something I'd heard from Goosebumps, and the acting and dialogue as well, a little comedic at times. The mom is one of the funniest characters because her line delivery is just really funny.
For a few days until she really gets over the shock of this.
I've got something better. I'm going to get her some help.
I thought the explanation of Freddy Krueger's past was interesting, but the way the mom just casually mentions that they burned him alive is just wild.
He's dead, honey, because Mommy killed him.
The third act is where shit goes down and Nancy finds a way to defend herself and stop Freddy, sort of. This was the most 80s sequence of the movie, and this is where it might have looked a little outdated, but for the most part, the practical effects hold up really well. While the third act wasn't my favorite part of the movie, I still enjoyed this one as a whole, and I found all the nightmare sequences to be so creative and gruesome. So after the big chase sequence, we find out no one actually died and it was all a dream. But then it turns out Nancy is still in a dream. Then her mom gets killed again. I mean, I like that it was a creepy ending. For me, it just raised more questions that feel unanswered. If you have an explanation, leave in the comments down below because I don't know shit. Now we move on to Scream. For years I've seen trailers for the sequels, and I always asked, why are they still making these? How have they not caught this guy yet? Now I get why they're still making sequels. This was a huge shift from everything I had previously watched, considering this one came out in '96. But it was also perfect to watch as the finale because it felt like a culmination of everything I had just watched. Scary movies are referenced like crazy in this one, to the point where it almost feels a little too on the nose, but I still loved it. From the very beginning of the movie, Ghostface is talking to Drew Barrymore about movies like Halloween, Friday the 13th, and A Nightmare on Elm Street. The movie even pokes fun at itself for following the tropes of your typical slasher. And this movie might have one of the best opening sequences of all time because it builds so much tension and paranoia in such a short span of time. Now, I'll admit the characters in this movie make some really dumb decisions that I couldn't ignore. Drew Barrymore had so much time to call the police and didn't, and now I understand why Scary Movie went so hard in making fun of it. In this opening, we get to see just how brutally violent this killer is and see the way he reels people in. It's a very different kind of slasher from what we've seen before. Not to mention, this isn't just a slasher, it's a murder mystery. From start to finish, I was hooked because I desperately wanted to know who the killer was. They do an insanely good job at making you guess, and I found myself going back and forth on who I thought the killer was because everyone in this movie looks suspicious, especially the horny police officer. No wonder why they made fun of this dude too. Ghostface feels like a combination of all the killers we've seen so far. Not you. Because of his silent approach, brutality, and the trolling he does over the phone. He truly feels iconic and fits the tone that this movie is going for. The stakes are high, but there's still a ton of room for humor that makes this such a fun watch. And even though the movie has this tone, it was able to pull off the tragic backstory of Sidney Prescott, and I felt that they did a great job bringing her story full circle by the very end. So we finally find out who the killer is, or should I say, the killers.
Somebody told me you had a boyfriend.
Throughout the movie, I had a strong suspicion that Shaggy would be a killer, partly because I always saw pictures from the movie of him holding a gun, so I guess that's not fair. But he also seemed to be the one that was the least fazed by these murders and never seemed to look over his shoulder. But then we find out that Ghostface was more than one person. The reveal that the boyfriend wasn't actually dead and was in on this the whole time completely caught me off guard. From that moment on, I understood why this movie has always been held in such high regard. Now, of course, from here the movie does what all these movies do. The main character fights back and things don't pan out for the killer. And in just one scene, Matthew Lillard goes off and plays this absolute psycho. I wish we got to see more of that. So to sum it up, this movie knows exactly what it's trying to be and what it's inspired by. And while it has some flaws in logic, it was such an enjoyable experience. And I'm convinced that I'm now a Scream fan, which I thought I would never be. This made me want to watch the sequels, maybe for another video. So with all that down, how do I feel about classic slashers and slasher movies in general? And where do I rank these ones? First off, I gotta say, I'm realizing now what makes a good slasher movie. Because a lot of them are the same rinse and repeat, and sometimes it feels pointless to just watch people get killed when there's not much of a story to tell. But I think when these movies try to be different, they make for a really fun time. When these movies check off all the boxes, they're worth the watch. Give me interesting characters, a good story, insane kills, and an iconic killer, and I will be invested. And look, slashers still aren't my go-to for horror because I always prefer a supernatural story. But I'll still give slashers a shot if they do something different. Now, in terms of ranking these bad boys, I'm gonna start from the bottom. You know what I'm putting there. Texas Doo-Doo Massacre. It has some really strong filmmaking qualities that are ahead of its time. I just couldn't stomach the gross torture and the 30 minutes of screaming. If you like this one, good for you. I don't think I can watch it again. Number 5. Halloween. This one had an interesting start with the introduction of Mike Myers and his escape from prison, but I wish they delved into that more. It's a very simple movie that relies on its eeriness, but that's all there really is to it. Regardless, I get why it's a holiday classic. The score is iconic, the mask is easily recognizable, and the kills are crazy. I'll just never understand why there's so many sequels for that particular franchise. Number 3, Friday the 13th. I almost feel like I wouldn't have watched this movie if I knew Jason wasn't in it, but I'm glad I did, and I'm glad it's part of this video. I thought this movie would be lower on my list, but the twist really saved it for me. Number 2, A Nightmare on Elm Street. This movie had some incredibly creative kills, an iconic killer, and some creepy visuals and practical effects that stand the test of time. Sure, it's a little corny here and there, but I think that's part of the charm. I will definitely watch this one again someday. And you already know what number 1 is. Scream was just too damn good. I was shocked how invested I was throughout this entire movie. It checked off every box of what I want from a slasher. To be fair, it had all the previous movies to take inspiration from, but this still could have missed the landing. I'm also a sucker for whodunit type movies, and you mix that in with a slasher and a clever twist ending, you've got me on board. This will forever be a classic in my mind. So after watching all those movies of people getting murdered, I think I need to watch a Christmas movie or something because my brain is fried. Anyway, be sure to subscribe and check out my other videos, as well as my weekly live streams of my podcast, the Cinecast. So yeah.
Bah!